They say there is a temple in Egypt where the goddess still waits. Her statue stands in the innermost chamber, her face hidden by a shimmering golden veil, and upon the wall behind her are carved words that no seeker forgets. I am all that has been, and is, and shall be, and no mortal has ever lifted my veil. The desert wind does not enter here. The noise of the city fades. Only the sound of your own footsteps echoes between the columns, each one carved with stories older than memory. You pass through the outer court, where the common people once brought offerings of bread and flowers, through the hall of pillars, where incense still lingers like a whisper of ancient prayers. And then you come to the door of the sanctuary. 2 tall braziers burn on either side, casting golden light across the threshold. Inside, silence. At the far end of the chamber, she waits, not carved from cold stone, but alive in presence, as if the air around her holds its breath. Her veil shimmers faintly, catching the firelight, hiding her face, hiding her truth. In this temple, seekers came not to worship in the way of the masses, but to pass through a sacred journey. They came to die to the self they had been, and to be born again as something new. The priests did not speak of this openly. The mysteries of Isis were guarded, for the unready mind cannot carry the weight of her truth. Here, to approach her was not a privilege of birth or status, it was earned through trial, discipline, and transformation. Those who were found worthy were brought before her, and in the quiet glow of the sanctuary, the veil was not lifted by hands, but by the awakening of the soul itself. And so, our journey begins here, in the cool shadow of her temple, beneath the moonlit sky of ancient Egypt, where the goddess waits, veiled in gold, and the initiate takes his first step toward the mystery. Long before her name echoed through temples from the Nile to the Mediterranean, Egypt itself was already a land of miracles. Here, the river was not merely water, it was life incarnate. Every year it rose, spilling its gift of fertile silt across the banks, painting the land green in the heart of the desert. And the people knew this was no accident. It was the work of the gods. Egypt's heart beat to the rhythm of Ma'at, the divine order that kept the sun rising, the stars turning, and the seasons in their perfect dance. Ma'at was truth, balance, justice, and every king, every priest, every farmer was bound to honor it. The gods were many: Ra, the sun, who sailed his golden bark across the sky; Thoth, the scribe, keeper of divine wisdom; Hathor, the goddess of joy and beauty; Osiris, the green-faced ruler of the underworld, who judged the souls of the dead. And yet, even in this crowded pantheon, there was space for something more, something that would touch not just the minds, but the hearts of the people. A goddess who would embody devotion, cunning, and an unshakable will, not only as a cosmic figure, but as one who walked with humanity in its struggles. This was the world into which Isis stepped. She was not born in obscurity. From the beginning, she was the daughter of earth and sky, Geb and Nut, born into the great divine family. But what set her apart was not simply her lineage, it was the way she bridged the human and the divine. To the farmers along the Nile, she was the one who taught them the art of weaving and healing herbs. To the kings, she was the embodiment of royal authority and the sacred protector of the throne. To the seekers, she was the keeper of the mysteries, the one whose veil hid not just her face, but the deepest truths of life and death. Her temples were not only places of worship, they were schools of initiation, where the outer rituals fed the masses, and the inner rites transformed the few. And so, in the heart of Egypt's golden age, the story of Isis began, a story woven of love and loss, magic and resurrection, wisdom and rebirth. But to understand her power, you must first understand the love that defined her, and the loss that would test it beyond all limits. In the golden light of the dawn of the world, there was a love that seemed untouchable. Isis, radiant and wise. Osiris, noble and just. They were not only husband and wife, they were two halves of a single soul, united in purpose. Osiris ruled Egypt with a gentle but unshakable hand. Under his reign, the land flourished. The Nile ran clear, the fields bore plentiful harvests, and the people lived in harmony. He taught them the arts of farming, the laws of Ma'at, the beauty of music and celebration. And at his side, Isis was more than a queen. She was the hidden strength behind the throne, the healer, the protector, the mother-to-be of a legacy yet to come. But in every story of light, there is the shadow. That shadow took the form of Set, Osiris's brother, god of storms, chaos, and the desert's barren rage. Set looked at Osiris's flourishing kingdom and felt not pride, but burning envy. He saw the people's love for their king, and it gnawed at him like a hunger he could not satisfy. One night, as the moon rose over the desert, Set devised his plan. He crafted a chest of cedar, carved to fit Osiris's body exactly, inlaid with gold and precious stones so that none could resist its beauty. At a great feast, Set brought forth the chest and made a playful challenge. "Whoever fits perfectly inside this chest shall have it as a gift." One by one, the guests tried, laughing, each finding it too small or too large. Then Osiris stepped forward, smiling, and lay down inside. The fit was perfect. In an instant, Set and his allies slammed the lid shut, sealed it with molten lead, and hurled it into the Nile. The current carried it away, and with it, Egypt's light seemed to vanish. When the news reached Isis, the world fell silent. But her grief did not make her still. It made her move. She swore she would not rest until she found him. Through marsh and desert, over water and sand, she searched, guided by whispers of the gods, by dreams, by the cry of the ibis and the rustle of the papyrus reeds. The Nile became her mirror. Each night she would kneel by its banks, gazing into its dark waters, asking them to return her beloved. Her search was not only for a husband, it was for the other half of herself, for the order of the world that had been shattered, for the heart of Egypt. And though the chest was hidden far from her sight, the bond between them remained unbroken, a thread of love that would lead her, step by step, toward the impossible. They say that love is strongest when tested by loss. For Isis, that test had become her life. Her search finally led her to the marshes near Byblos, far from the sands of Egypt. There, in the shadow of foreign shores, she found it, the chest of cedar and gold, hidden within the roots of a great tamarisk tree that had grown around it as if trying to protect the treasure within. The people of Byblos had cut down this tree to use its trunk as a pillar in their palace. And so, Isis, concealing her divine nature, entered the court of their king as a humble servant, her beauty veiled, her voice gentle. She cared for the queen's children with such love that they called her mother. At night, she performed quiet rites, anointing them with sacred oils, wrapping them in fire's warmth, for she meant to make them immortal. But when the queen discovered this, she cried out in fear, breaking the spell. It was then that Isis revealed who she was. With the king's permission, she cut open the pillar, releasing the chest, and took it into her care. She returned to Egypt with the chest and laid it in a secret chamber. There, with the care of a healer and the devotion of a lover, she opened it, and saw him, Osiris, still and silent, his skin the color of the deep earth, his spirit lingering just beyond her reach. She bent over him and wept, her tears falling like pearls upon his face. Then she began the work, the ancient magic taught only to the gods, the art of weaving breath back into the body. She spoke words that trembled with power, her voice rose and fell in tones that echoed the music of the stars. She anointed his skin with oils from the farthest deserts, she wrapped him in linen blessed under the moon's gaze, and in the stillness, something stirred. His chest rose once, a breath taken from beyond death. His eyes opened for a moment, meeting hers. In that moment, they conceived Horus, the child who would one day avenge his father and restore the throne. But the resurrection was not to be complete. The laws of the underworld could not be broken entirely. Osiris's place was now in the Duat, the realm of the dead, where he would reign as judge and guide of souls. Still, Isis had brought life from death, hope from despair. She had shown that love, magic, and will could reach beyond the veil of mortality. And so, the art of resurrection became more than a story. It became a path, a mystery that every initiate would one day face, to die to the old self, and rise again, transformed. They call it the Veil of Isis. A phrase so old, its origin is lost in the sands of time. But the veil is not simply a garment, it is a teaching, a path, a challenge. In the outer temples, the veil was physical, woven of the finest linen, shimmering in the light of oil lamps, drawn across the statue of the goddess so that no uninitiated eyes might see her face. Priests spoke of it in hushed tones, saying it was not to keep her from the people, but to keep the people from a truth they were not yet ready to bear. For Isis's veil was not merely a cloth, it was the barrier between the visible and the invisible, the known and the unknown, the self you show to the world, and the self you have yet to discover. Those who sought to lift it could not do so with their hands, they had to lift it within themselves. The path began with purification. Days of fasting, prayers at dawn, ritual baths in the cool waters of the Nile. Every act stripped away a layer of what the seeker thought they were. Then came the trials, walking blindfolded through halls of darkness to test trust in the unseen, reciting sacred words without error to prove mastery of memory and focus, passing nights alone in the desert, where the silence spoke louder than the wind. Each step was not about earning the right to see the goddess's face, it was about earning the strength to face their own. And when the final day came, the initiate was led into the sanctuary. The air was thick with incense, the veil shimmered in the lamplight. A priest whispered, "When you are ready, the veil will lift itself." Some stood frozen, feeling the weight of 1,000 years pressing down. Others closed their eyes, breathing deep, until they felt it. That inner veil parting, that quiet knowing rising from deep within. For the truth of Isis is this: to lift her veil is not to see her, but to see through her, into the heart of all that is. In the myths, they call her the Great Enchantress, not because she cast illusions to deceive, but because her magic was the art of truth, the power to call things into being as they truly were meant to be. Isis's magic was older than Egypt itself. It came from the time before time, when words were not just sounds, but living forces, each one shaping the world like the hand of a sculptor on clay. She knew the names of the winds and could bid them to rise or fall. She knew the herbs that could pull sickness from the body as surely as a thorn from the skin. She knew how to weave spells into music, so that a lullaby could heal a broken heart or ease the pain of childbirth. But her greatest act of magic was not in bending nature, it was in awakening the divine within those who sought her. In the inner chambers of her temples, Isis would teach her chosen initiates the Hakau, the sacred words of power. These were not given lightly. Before a single syllable was spoken, the student had to be purified, disciplined, and proven in heart. For to speak such words carelessly was to set forces in motion you could not control. There is an ancient story, that even Ra, the great sun god, possessed a secret name known only to himself. And Isis, desiring the fullness of his power to protect her people, sought to learn it. Through patience, cunning, and compassion, she did, not to overthrow him, but to use that power in service of life. This is the essence of her magic, not domination, but restoration, not control, but harmony. In the mysteries of Isis, magic was never separate from morality. Every spell was bound to the law of Ma'at, truth, balance, and justice. To use it for selfish gain was to step into the shadow of Set, the path of destruction. And so her students learned that the greatest magic of all was not to call down the stars or still the winds, it was to align oneself so completely with truth, that your very presence became a blessing. Isis was called Mother of Magic not only because she wielded it, but because she birthed it in others, nurturing their power until they could stand in the world as living embodiments of her light. When the breath of Osiris left the world of the living, Isis was left with a burden and a promise, the child growing within her, Horus, son of the rightful king, heir to the throne, and the living spark of all her hope. But Set was not finished. He knew that as long as Horus lived, the throne was not truly his. And so Isis did what every mother, divine or mortal, would do. She hid her child away from the reach of harm. She fled to the papyrus marshes of the Nile Delta, a place where the reeds grew taller than a man, where the air was thick with the hum of insects and the songs of hidden birds. Here, in the shifting labyrinth of green and water, she built a sanctuary. By day, she taught Horus the ways of the gods, the laws of Ma'at, the art of patience, the strength in silence. By night, she told him the stories of his father, not as a tale of loss, but as a beacon to guide him. She trained him not with the sword first, but with the mind. The one who can master himself, she told him, has already mastered his enemy. There are old hymns that speak of Horus as the falcon in the nest, his eyes bright and sharp, learning to see from great heights before his wings ever touched the wind. Isis would place him on her lap, point to the stars, and tell him their names, teaching him that every light in the sky was an ally, and that some enemies wear the face of a friend. But this was no childhood without trial. The marshes were not only a sanctuary, they were a test. Horus learned to move silently through water, to wait motionless for hours, to read the signs of the wind and the ripples of the Nile. And in these quiet lessons, Isis taught him what every initiate must learn. That power is nothing without discipline, that courage is nothing without wisdom, and that justice must be tempered with mercy. The day would come when Horus would face Set in open battle, but long before that day, he had already begun the true battle, the one every seeker faces, the battle to know himself. The years passed. The boy in the marshes became a man, tall, strong, and sharp-eyed like the falcon whose spirit he carried. And when the time came, Horus stepped from the shadows of hiding into the blazing light of destiny. The challenge was given, to face Set, the usurper, in a contest for the throne of Egypt. The gods themselves would preside over this battle, for the outcome would shape not only a kingdom, but the balance between order and chaos. The struggle was long and bitter. Horus and Set fought not just with weapons, but with cunning, racing boats along the Nile, wrestling in the courts of the gods, testing each other with riddles and wit. There is a story told in the temple walls. In one contest, Set transformed himself into a great black hippopotamus, thrashing in the river. Horus dove in after him, striking with his harpoon, but when Set cried out in pain, Isis, watching from the bank, was moved with compassion. She used her magic to free him, believing that mercy was greater than vengeance. Horus, enraged, saw this as a betrayal. He struck at her in anger. Some say he cut off her head, which the gods restored with the head of a cow as a sign of her patience and motherly forbearance. And still, she remained by his side, for Isis knew what the gods knew, that the throne was not truly won by the strongest arm, but by the purest heart. That victory gained through hatred would only plant the seeds of future ruin. Eventually, the gods judged Horus to be the rightful king. Set was cast down, his reign of chaos ended. Horus took his place upon the throne, with Isis at his side as the queen mother, the silent architect of his triumph. But in truth, her greatest victory was not in placing her son upon the throne. It was in teaching him, and all who would hear her story, that real power is not in defeating your enemies, but in ruling yourself. The story of Isis is not only about gods and kings, love and loss. It is also about you. Every seeker who entered her temple knew this truth, that the myth was the map, and the initiation was the journey. To the uninitiated, Isis's search for Osiris was only a tale of devotion, but to the one who walks the path, it is the search for the lost self, the higher self buried beneath the weight of life's wounds and illusions. Osiris, scattered in pieces, is the soul fragmented by fear, grief, and desire. Isis, gathering him, is the will of the seeker collecting the parts of themselves long abandoned. The resurrection, even if incomplete, is the moment we awaken to our true nature. And Horus, the child born from that union of loss and love, is the new self, the one forged in trial, tempered in patience, ready to stand in the world not as it once was, but as it could be. This is why her initiations were called rebirths. The candidate would pass through symbolic death, descending into the dark chambers of the temple, fasting, meditating, facing their deepest fears. Then, after days in the tomb-like silence, they would emerge into the light, their first sight being the veiled statue of Isis, a reminder that the journey had only revealed the first layer of truth. The initiate who had faced this inner death and rebirth walked differently. Their eyes held a calm that could not be shaken. Their voice carried a weight beyond their years. They did not seek power for its own sake because they had already touched something greater than power. This was the gift of Isis, not just the promise of rebirth, but the tools to make it real. Not just the myth of a goddess, but the living presence of a mother who guides her children through the night into the dawn. The temple is silent again. The incense burns low. And you stand once more before the statue of Isis. The golden veil still shimmers between you and her gaze. You have heard her story, of love that crossed the threshold of death, of magic that restored what was lost, of the child who rose to take the throne, and the wisdom that has outlived empires. And yet, the veil remains. You reach out a hand, but stop. Somewhere deep inside, you understand now, it was never meant to be lifted by touch. It can only be lifted from within. Because the veil of Isis is not a barrier she places between herself and you. It is the barrier you place between yourself and the truth. Every illusion you cling to, every lie you tell yourself, every fear you feed, is another thread in that veil. And so, the work is not to tear it away in impatience, but to unravel it, thread by thread, through clarity, courage, and compassion. There will always be more to see, more to understand, more to become. That is why her veil is eternal. Because awakening is not a single moment. It is a path without end. And as you stand there, the flicker of torchlight in your eyes, you realize that Isis has been watching you all along, not from behind the veil, but from within you. She has been the voice urging you to seek. The hands that guided you when you stumbled. The heart that called you to remember who you are. And now, as you step back into the night, the stars bright above the Nile, the veil is still there, but it is lighter, thinner, and you carry a piece of her light within you. The question is not whether you can lift her veil. The question is, are you ready to see what lies beyond it?